Recording in progress.
مرحبا وأهلا وسهلا بالجميع بهذه الندوة.
Welcome everyone to our webinar. We will start with a short introduction that will introduce the webinar, and then we have a number of comrades who will be providing their input. You know that the region has been facing a series of massacres that started with the genocide war against Gaza to the war against Lebanon and the open war that Lebanon and the region is facing today. In light of the growing and increasing Zionist and American attack on the region, and the peoples in the region are faced with a gleam outlook in the region. The war is no longer targeting fighters or military locations, but it has targeted schools, hospitals, universities, and different economic and social infrastructure. The objective is no longer to occupy a land, but to attack a society, undermine its memory and its capability to resist and to restore its life. In front of this Nakba, there is a number of questions that needs to be asked. Are we faced with a systematic attack against the resistance? Is the Zionist and American project trying to reshape the region in a way that will ensure the Zionist entity's supremacy over the region? What are the humanitarian and social and economic repercussions of the vast destruction that Gaza and Lebanon has faced? How can societies that face this level of destruction can rebuild themselves? The region also has entered an era of twisted diplomacy, a diplomacy that is highly linked with the American decisions and the decisions of the administration that stem from the coalition between the American administration and the Zionist entity. What is presented to Lebanon and Gaza? Is it true negotiations, or are they conditions imposed by under fire? Could agreements that do not address the roots of the conflict, that is, the occupation and the right of Palestinians to decide for the right of the self-determination, could they change the situation? The military attack and assault on Gaza, going to the systematic attempts to annex different regions in the West Bank, and the attacks against south of Lebanon, all of these are attacks in order to subjugate the peoples in Lebanon and in Palestine to the will of the occupation forces. Why should the struggle for our future would be closely linked to the liberation fight that we're fighting for our land? Based on all of these questions, this webinar has been organized, the struggle for sovereignty in Lebanon and Palestine, resisting the architecture of occupation, organized by the IPA in collaboration with Mikhail Awad, a politician and researcher from Lebanon, Wissam Rafidi, a liberated prisoner and a lecturer in the faculty of Bethlehem, and Anwar Yassin, a prisoner liberated from the occupation prisons. We'll start this webinar with Mikhail Awad to provide us an insight on the agreement of 26, the deal. Is it a deal for sovereignty in exchange for security? He will be analyzing the conditions imposed on Lebanon, the strategic pillars of the Zionist American coalition against the resistance in Lebanon, and also how this agreement is used as a lever to reinstate annexation, and
هذا اللقاء
hegemony.
نحبذنا دائما
Thank you.
نتواصل معكم
Thank you very much
ونتساءل
for organizing this webinar.
المنصات المفتوحة
It is a great opportunity
بأمريكا
to
بتوقيت القدس
interact with the
وتفاعلي
different
لدينا جملة من الطاقات في شمال
comrades. And in addition to our participation in these webinars, we have a podcast on TikTok that
ممتازة في شمال البلد
allowed us to have an interaction with many friends and comrades to analyze the geopolitical situation in the region. This podcast is a platform that will allow the different friends to know what reality we are faced with and to analyze what can happen in the future. The deal or the agreement that was concluded between the Lebanese, what is called the Lebanese Authority, and Israel is not a result of negotiation. It is not a reflection of the balance of power or the different developments in the conflict. It is an agreement that has been dictated by the entity that is supporting the war of genocide and displacement uh, in order to occupy the Lebanese territories. So the agreement came in order to ensure complete American control over Lebanon, since Trump wants to make Lebanon a Trumpist economic zone, and he is aiming at displacing Lebanese from their territory to occupy the Levant coast as a whole. All material data shows this. America wants to occupy Mesopotamia and the Levant for their historical importance and the importance of its political location. And what is going on now is a world war against different locations on Earth, and this requires us to resist this war. The agreement came in the context of a systematic and well-studied plan, first to eradicate the Palestinian cause and displace all of the Palestinians from the West Bank and from the Gaza Strip, and also to displace the Shiite from Lebanon in order to seize the south and then occupy Tripoli through the religious groups or that are under the authority of Erdogan, because these are two very important regions that will help reshape the world economy, and in order to ensure a sustainable gas and oil supply for America. Thomas Barak said that the U.S. and the Anglo-Saxon world have lost control over Hormuz Strait. This is why they are trying to move to land and control the land pathways to ensure sustainable supplies for them. This war is the last of all wars, and this is why there are a number of developments that are taking place, and it is an open war that will witness a number of phases. There is a primordial phase now for the Zionist and U.S. coalition. Also, we've seen that they have lost in many of the war phases. If we look at history, if an enemy hasn't reached its objectives from war, then they are defeated. And to achieve this victory, we need to stop the enemy from achieving their objectives and impose our own conditions. Until now, the objectives of the enemy has not been achieved. In Gaza, all the fighters and men have stood fast against the genocide. In Lebanon, the fighters fought in a legendary way for 110 days. The land forces of Israel have reached the collapse phase. If it wasn't for the agreement that provided this formal victory for Netanyahu and provided them with the opportunity to withdraw all of their brigades and restructure them. Zamir for 3 times said this once during a cabinet meeting where he bursted yelling against everyone, saying that the army is wear down, the different heads of brigades and battalions are in a great fatigue. And this is why he said to Netanyahu either to provide the necessary replenishment for the army or you need to withdraw it. A second and a third time, this sentence has been reiterated by Zamir. This is why Netanyahu rushed for this agreement that was dictated by the U.S. in order to provide an opportunity to withdraw the army. And this agreement was imposed on Lebanon. The other point that we need to take into consideration is that this war is a war for the liberation of Palestine from sea to the river. To stop and this war is done by the U.S. after it failed in the First and Second World War to achieve its objectives. It's trying to reshape the region in a new manner. Like Thomas Barak has said, we need to destroy entities and armies in the region so that we reshape the region on the basis of ethnic, religious, and social groups. So his theory says that entities are becoming a liability, and this is why each group should manage its own self, and for us as Americans, we will manage everyone. What we need is good geography and free access to oil supplies. This will be the war of the end of Israel and the exit of the Anglo-Saxon forces, the West, with its different designations. Why? Because Netanyahu, after October 7, said this. This is an existential war. If we don't triumph, we will not have any place for the region. So based on the practical and concrete studies, and if we look at the different historical schools, we are sure that America hasn't achieved any of its objectives. The Zionist entity hasn't achieved any of its objectives. Now Israel is facing a structural fragmentation, and the U.S. also. There are many threats that threaten the U.S. administration, and the midterm election and the different opinion polls that show the decline in popularity of Trump shows this. So this war is still an open war and will not stop unless we see the last deciding round. The last deciding round in a war like this is related to the cause that
أشعلتها وهي قضية حق قومي على مدى 77
ignited it is the Palestinian cause, and for 77 years all the tools, mediation and proposals for solutions to settle it have failed, and this means that the historical truth is that either conquerors would take by force this land, or the nationalist right will be reinstated to its owners, to the Palestinians. Many have followed me since 2021, and they know that I said repeatedly, we are in the times of the war for the liberation of Palestine, and between October until 7th, 2022, we will see a storm that will impose itself and will end the existence of the Zionist entity, and Palestine will be liberated. In the evaluation of what happened, everyone says that the U.S. and Israel have failed to achieve their openly declared objectives, and they moved from Plan A to Plan B. The Plan A was to destroy Iran, demolish it, and seize all of its wealth. And this has been explicitly said by Netanyahu and Trump. And also to eradicate and devastate the resistance in Palestine and in Gaza. But after many years, they have failed to achieve these objectives. Their loss in front of Iran and in Gaza, and their failure in Lebanon, they're now moved to a new phase, a new era of what they call the vital moving defense strategy, or surgical attacks. What we're seeing, what we've been seeing in the Strait of Hormuz since the beginning of this war against Iran, we are inclined to say that with the new young leadership in Iran, and with the millions of crowds that have raised the mottos of revenge and raised the slogans of death to America and death to Israel, and the reinstatement of their military forces by virtue of the support from Russia, from North Korea, and from China, we will see new repercussions where the whole world have seen that Iran is a prestigious, deeply rooted civilization that cannot be overthrown or cannot be understood. They are fighting relentlessly against the U.S. And after all the blows that they have succumbed, they haven't been totally destroyed. They created a surprise. The surprise came by the attacks that targeted American interests in the region and the control over Hormuz Strait. Through these two tactical moves, the Iran has immuned itself, and Iran became the one to decide where the war will go and what outcome will it have. In addition to this, Iran, through negotiation, has been able to impose a new situation, different from the situation that resulted from the previous wars between the Arab and the U.S. and the Zionist entity. Now Iran has put new foundations for its response. They said decisively, the Hormuz Strait is owned by us. No country can impose its sovereignty over us. So they imposed this by force, They said that they will retaliate. Yesterday and today, they retaliated. They've been able to strike American assets in the region. And this action has shown that the U.S. was incompetent in defending its military bases and its allies. Now we're seeing a Sunni coalition from 4 regional countries that delegated Palestine to manage the negotiation. And these 4 countries are taking distance away from their loyalty to the US. What has been achieved on the field, the incompetence of the US means that the regimes in the region want to protect themselves. This is why Saudi Arabia rushed to sign an agreement with Pakistan and brought 20,000 troops from Pakistan. The UAE concluded an agreement with Egypt to get a squadron from the Air Force to support it, and so on and so forth. Regardless of all statements and declarations made by the countries in the region to dissuade Iran from launching attacks against the economic infrastructure in those regions, they were not able to impose anything in the region. Truce, ceasefire, extension of truce, all of these are actions that can take place during wars. This is the nature of war. But the war is still ongoing. The war is ongoing and it is now increasing in cost, is getting wider, and it is providing a new military reality, meaning that we should have a decisive round that will decide who is the victorious in the future. Also, if we look at the Second World War, the Moscow-Stalingrad battle, these show that the victorious will be the one that have many tricks up their sleeves and have power elements that empower them to be successful. The US has depleted all of its power elements. During the 40 Days War, they've targeted Khamenei to decapitate the head of the Iranian regime, thinking that they will end the war. However, Iran did not succumb to that. Iran has a number of spaces where they can defend themselves, like Yemen and Iraq. These haven't been invoked yet as fronts of conflict. Iran is immune from any infiltration that can happen on land. However, it has a huge military power in terms of quantity, training, and equipment. And they can surprise everyone when they start a land invasion in the north of Iraq to Basra until Oman Sultanate. And this will make us conclude that America and Israel will be defeated. And Netanyahu, as he said, if we are defeated, we will not have any place to be in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this valuable presentation and for this hope that we will be restoring our property. Now we'll continue with a presentation from our intervention of our comrade Wissam Rafid. He is a retired professor from the universities of Bethlehem, who will be speaking about the current situation, what is the strategy of the yellow line? What are the goals of the war? What is the institutional crisis and the government vacuum, in addition to the fragmentation of the protection wall, in addition to the structured displacement? Please, you have the floor. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. I would like to start by speaking on the substance, by asserting one specific point, which is the nature of the colonization project in Palestine. My comrade have spoken about many failing attempts. October 7th has clearly unveiled the true nature of the Israeli colonization project, because October 7th has shown that the goal is to raise the existence of the Palestinian people. And Netanyahu said it clearly at the United Nations, and this makes us see the changes that happen at the level of the Arab regimes. These regimes are feeling serious fear because this project threatens both Jordan, Iraq, and some parts of Saudi Arabia. And this project puts these regimes in front of a historical exam. The event of October 7th showed this nature of a project. There is also no other way to find a middle solution in the Zionist Arab conflict. Many governments tried over the years to promote for the solution, but that solution has faded away completely because the Israeli occupation doesn't want a Palestinian state, and any talks about a Palestinian state is a rumor. And in reality, the serious changes in the political thinking of Palestine, the only solution they perceive is to raise the Zionist entity and colonization. In Gaza, situation hasn't changed, but only the frequencies of death and the number of martyrs had changed. The resistance, we need to recognize that they were subjected to different attacks, especially the targeting of many Hezbollah leaders, and in addition to the fall of the regime in Syria. And this is another subject, but there are two lungs in the axis that were seriously attacked. Luckily, in the Arab region, particularly at the level of the resistance axis, Hezbollah, after targeting Hassan Nasrallah, and luckily Hezbollah in the last fight restored its strengths, and repositioned itself on the different axis. And my comrade Mikhail had shed the light on this point. Indeed, the Israeli military is witnessing a serious and a true crisis in the south of Lebanon. What is happening in Gaza, it is not a continuation of what has already started, but it is a systemic hunger and a famine, and there are many attempts to prevent from rebuilding all the civilian and medical facilities in Gaza, and the attempts to mobilize the population in Rafah as a residential area. What is important, the assault on Gaza is not which aimed at displacing the Palestinian population had failed because the key or the primary goal of the Israeli occupation is to displace the Palestinian population and the resistance. It is very important to shed light on this resilience of the resistance and of the Palestinian population. And here we need to commend the roles played by Egypt and Jordan, because if when we speak about the displacement of the Palestinian populations to Egypt and Jordan, in addition to their roles to supporting the resistance in Gaza, but these variables should be taken under consideration because it contributed to the failure of the Israeli project to displace the Palestinian population, and in addition to the role played by the resistance in Gaza, which is the result of many serious transformations that happened on the ground, and also after the agreement with Syria, which is a very bad agreement, but this is an agreement that the resistance resorted to, which resulted in considering Trump as the man of peace and changing the Palestinian cause from a national liberation project to liberate Palestine to a humanitarian project about health and education services. And this is the risk that is faced. Similarly, what is happening in the West Bank is very similar to what is happening in Gaza. When we take a look at the political media and even the popular media, they consider the current government as a far right government. As if our problems with the settlers is a problem of consciousness and a psychological obstacle, like someone said, that there is a psychological obstacle between the Arabs and the Israelis. No, the settlers are completely aware about the field situation, and the polls say that most of the settlers communities that are pushing for the complete displacement of Palestinian population. Therefore, any myths and illusions about this psychological obstacles that are illusions or they are malicious intents of malicious agendas. There is no solutions at all. All the solutions that are temporary solutions, and they all help to increase and reinforce the Zionist project. The killings and the genocide that happened in Gaza. But what's happening in the West Bank, it is very similar to what's happening to what happened to Gaza in the past by pushing the villagers to go to the border areas and to displace the Palestinian citizens and to push them away from the Israeli settlements so that they can be completely isolated based on Smotrich views. So the Palestinians they have only two options: whether to die or to work for the Israeli occupation. Therefore, this Israeli plan is not a new one, but it is being developed on a daily basis under different governments, even under the Zionist left government. The settlements didn't stop. The settlements have increased more than 300%. Therefore, there is no difference between the old Israeli market and the new Israeli market. The only difference is the discourse and the and the extension and extending the settlement activities. And I am sure, and our people are sure, that such a project won't be implemented easily because the experience of 48 and 67 will be repeated. It is not that easy that Palestinians will go back to their lands, especially we know that Jordan won't let anyone to cross the borders, and same applies to Egypt. Therefore, this project is sanctioned to fail. What is the issue posed now is how to defeat such a project in Gaza and in the West Bank. Defeating such a project requires the unification of the whole Palestinian people, including the Palestinian right. Even therefore, for the interest of the Palestinian people to concretely resist such a project by building the national unity, my conviction, I think that would be the biggest catastrophe that threatens the Palestinian cause, which is the fact that the horizons of the Palestinian cause is blocked because it is faced with two completely different programs and with two contradictory political directions. And on the other hand, we see the change of Netanyahu, and we'll be seeing a new government, and we'll be repeating the same episodes that started with Oslo and all the experiences that we lived over 34 years. I think that the American administration is trying to erase all what is relating to the Palestinian identity and replacing it with administrative committees that is very similar to municipalities. And what is interesting in this regard is that there are many decisions that come under the title of the reform, political reform. It is not a Palestinian in reality, but it is an Israeli, a U.S. request when they put requirements on the candidates for the municipal elections. They excluded the political powers except Fatah movement and with other minority movements. They started with by messing with the procedures, which is actually the U.S. are dictating to stop the salaries and the entitlements of the injured and the families of the martyrs, and the Zionists are saying that the Palestinian reform should start by accepting and acknowledging Israel. But for us, the true reform should start by reforming the progressist movement that aim for liberating Palestine. We need to build the Palestinian institution on democratic foundations. Therefore, the horizons are almost blurry. When we think about the classical concept of Palestinian unity, there is a new political thinking. There is a need for a new political thinking, which is about the unity of the Palestinian resistance. We should move away from the political legitimacy. You have been working for 2 years under this title, legitimacy and completely fragmented as institutions, and sometimes they have explicitly stated that they are against Hamas, and that they pointed at Hamas and other resistance movements as if they are responsible for the genocide. Therefore, it is requested from the political movements in Palestine to look for a new alternatives, to think for a new level that is based on the recognition of the classical Palestinian thinking that is based on the Palestinian Charter for the liberation of Palestine, and adopting the approach of resistance, and this entails the Arab recognition and the popular recognition, and until now the political movements in Palestine is that they are using a clientism based approach, given its weight on the Arab level, but there is no other alternative for the genuine Palestinian leadership. This Palestinian leadership, what is new? This leadership is responding to the different demands of reforms, including the legislative council elections, and which is very similar to the municipalities, and also there are many calls for a presidential council. And what is interesting in this topic, not to apply for these elections, but because democracy, it is not a technical matter. It is not about polls, but democracy, it should be based on a national resistance plan. This requires a national consensus. This requires a new political project that promote the Palestinian states, and not to reproduce the old political thinking, which was just reshaping of Al-Fatah movement, and which is continuing its functional role stipulated by the I think that confronting the Israeli and the colonization project in the West Bank, which is based on a genocide, it is not a genocide of the populations, but it is a genocide of the environment, of the institutions, and sociology had used a cleansing of populations, of environment, and even of the land itself. They have destroyed thousands of olive trees, and this is indeed one of the genocides of the Palestinian environment. I think what is happening now in the different regarding different levels of genocides in Gaza and in the West Bank requires rethinking the Palestinian and political institution as a resistance and a liberation institution. Therefore, to go out, to move away from the classical political thinking, the first principle that we need to focus on is the national unity. So how can we speak about national unity while that institution is dealing and working with the Israeli intelligence services? No, the second pillar, which is the liberation organization, which is the only legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, and this goes back to the 70s. But where is the liberation organization today? The liberation organization today at the Palestinian level, and I say it confidently, doesn't have any existence and doesn't have any impact in the daily consciousness of the Palestinian people. They are completely fragmented structures. Days ago, one of the speakers who is belonging to the executive committee who is working on the file of families, he said, I told him that there are no institutions for this organization practically, and this is, I think, what is happening today. And thank you.
شكرا لهذه المداخلة القيمة والتفاصيل والمعلومات المهمة وتحية
Thank you
للشعب
for this valuable intervention. All our salutation to the Palestinian people, that it is steadfast in defending Palestine in spite of all of the actions against genocide actions against them. They're still steadfast against the Zionist entity. We also support the re-establishment. I forgot to salute Comrade Yassin. And we had a year together in Asqalana. Also, Anwar Yassin, Comrade Anwar Yassin. Greetings and salutations to all of the comrades. Yes, we will give the floor to Comrade Anwar to talk about the reality of prisoners within Israeli prisons and outside of them, and how can we reactivate the solidarity campaign with the prisoners, and what is the objective of the Zionist entity publishing or out of publishing videos and pictures of torture against prisoners. With Comrade Anwar Yassin, who is a liberated Lebanese prisoner, liberated from the prisons of the occupation forces. Thank you. I would like to salute you, Comrade Yana, Comrade and friend Wissam Rafidi, and Comrade Mikhail, and all of the comrades and friends with us. Allow me, please, first to say that our struggle against the Zionist entity is happening at different levels and within different layers. One of the levels of this struggle is at the level of the prisoners' movement, which is one of the levers of Palestinian resistance within the occupied territory. This is why Palestinian prisoners are now in a heating struggle. There is a criminal plot to murder the spirit of Palestinian prisoners who were always steadfast and willing to resist the Zionist entity. This is why the Zionist enemy is trying to suffocate the spirit and demolish it, but through different practices. But the Palestinian people are still resisting, they're still steadfast, they are feeding this struggle through our prisoners. And this is why the Palestinian prisoners movement is still in play within Israeli prisons. And their resistance shows that the enemy was not able to suffocate them or to stop their struggles. Also, this movement has shown that they are an example to follow suit in the Arab world, especially that the prisoners' movement has been always attacked in an attempt to uproot it from the nationalist spirit in the Arab world, to eradicate it also from the Palestinian people as an incubator for this movement. However, the militant forces in Lebanon, in Palestine, in the resistance forces have shown that they are still living in spite of the genocide and Zionist massacres they were subject to. All of these attacks, all of this genocide attacks aim at eradicating and uprooting Palestinians from their land, because the Zionist entity came to occupy Palestine thinking that it is a land without people. This is why we're living now in a sort of a euphoria because of the because this spirit, this movement has been rekindled. It has proven to be beyond all of the attacks and all of the demolition attempts that the Zionist entity tried to deploy against it. This is why this defiance, this steadfastness, and this resistance against the Zionist mindset has proven to live, to stay lit up in spite of all the technological or military oppression Palestine has been subject to. After this big slap in the face of the Zionist occupation, and after new seeds of resistance have been planted in Palestine and in all resistance location, we were able to continue our struggle for a long period of time. Prisoners are part of this struggle, are a part of this battle. Prisoners in the past 3 years, the 3 years especially, were subject to increasing attacks and oppression, especially under the new Zionist mindset that exists amongst the Israeli government members. This is why, in addition to the military attack and genocide against our people in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Iran, in Yemen, this criminality and this military oppression against all of the Palestinians, Lebanese, and Iranian and Yemenis. In addition to this, the Zionist oppressor has committed hideous crimes against or behind bars in their prisons against Palestinian prisoners. They have exercised what they all already exercised in terms of torture and oppression in the past, but they had restraints in the past as they wanted to present themselves as a democratic, human rights respecting country that has specific policies that they respect in dealing with prisoners. However, when they were unable to domesticate the spirit of prisoners, they turned on their true face. They showed us their true colors. They bluntly, openly started exercising this criminality, and they uncovered their true colors to the world. This is why we're saying that this is the phase that declared the end of the Zionist era, because they put on this mask to conceal this criminality, to present a face that shows humanity, respect of human rights and democracy in a region that it is living in religious fanaticism, in backwardness, and so on and so forth. But through social media, the world has seen the true color. I believe that social media has supported the Palestinian cause greatly, since these crimes cannot be concealed no more. It has shown the world what crimes are committed against the Palestinian people, against Palestinian men, women, children, and elderly. The misleading mainstream media no longer has the upper hand now, because this misleading mainstream media in the region has shown or presented Israel as the victim that's being attacked. That's why they call their military the Israeli Defense Forces, and they have a Minister of Defense. But today, the free world, the world that thought that this entity is the right holder, is an entity that is vectoring the message of human rights and democracy in the world, but they were uncovered. The mask has fallen. The Zionist entity has been presented to the world as it is, a cancer sweeping in the region, eating up everything through oppression and through criminality and through military force. The world, the free world, has seen this reality, and now the free world has been invoked in order to pressure the governments to stop supporting the interests of the Zionist project. So this is a great opportunity to reshape the liberation project of the sons and daughters of the Arab Ummah. So this liberation project can be reshaped vis-a-vis the Zionist entity, but also vis-a-vis the powers that supported the Zionist project itself, especially Britain, France, and many other European countries. So now their people are condemning these atrocities against Palestine and against Lebanon. And this is why it is in the interest of the free people of the Arab world to look for tools, to look for means, to look for ways to unite and support the resistance culture. We have a shared interest. We want to deter these occupation forces. That's why we need to have a unified project that takes its legitimacy from the heroism of the resistance forces in Palestine and Lebanon and in the region, and to follow suit the steadfastness and resilience of these fighters and these resistance forces. Awareness also should be raised on the reality of things. This is why we're always calling for a national Arab liberation project to support change in our respective countries. We cannot achieve liberation while these people are governed by a regime that supports the occupation or a Zionist project. So if we don't do that, we don't change the regimes, then we are as if filling up a basket with water. We cannot liberate the peoples of the region while the regimes are still supporting that occupation project, Zionist occupation project. Let's return to the issue of prisoners. It is one of the main elements of struggle against the Zionist regime. In the prisoners movement, we have witnessed a number of undermining factors that started with the doomed Oslo Agreement. The Oslo Agreement led the Palestinian forces to get fragmented, to see part of the Palestinian forces colluding with the Zionist entity in order to get a historical solution, what is called the two-state solution. But this is just a mirage, because this occupation, settlement-based Zionist regime did not settle for what is given by the Palestinian. They wanted more. There are, on the other hand, revolutionary forces that decided to bargain, to make compromises until they now coordinate at the security level to reach an authority, a Palestinian authority that has destroyed the culture of resistance and had targeted resistance forces and has facilitated the existence of the Zionist entity and facilitated the criminality of the Zionist entity. This is why we always reiterate something. This policy that divided the national Palestinian project has also affected the prisoners' movement. And now the forces that agreed to Oslo are no longer calling for the liberation of the prisoners who were the heroes against the Zionist force. So the Oslo Agreement did not call for the liberation of all prisoners. And this is why the forces that supported Oslo Agreement called for the improvement of the conditions of the prisoners from Fatah. Here they wanted to improve their conditions by facilitating family visitation and allowing families to provide food for prisoners, but they were deceived because the Zionist regime said the U.S. forces still have people who believe in resistance and in the struggle, and this is why they denied prisoners from these facilities. And the Zionist regime has deepened this fragmentation in the prisoner movement and in national liberation forces in Palestine. This is why in the past few years, what happened in Gaza unified again the national prisoners movement, and unity became stronger. Before even Tufan al-Aqsa, there was an initiative, or Al-Aqsa flood, there's an initiative within the prisoners movement to unite their ranks to support the true resistance project. They didn't call for a national unity only, but they are calling for a resistance project, a true resistance project that cuts with that security coordination supported by the current Palestinian Authority. This is why they didn't want to just focus on formalities and forget the content. A content that is supported by many Palestinians who believe in the struggles and who believe in the mindset of resistance, regardless of their ideological or religious background. This is why the resistance culture was a point of unity for all Palestinians. We're seeing that because of this idea receding from the liberation culture in Palestine, it led to some forces being at the forefront of representation of the Palestinian people, those who do not truly represent the Palestinian people. They were the ones who were maiming the true resistance. They were only preserving their interests that intersect with the imperialist and Zionist interests. Therefore, the unity amongst the prisoners' movement gave back the spirit, gave back to the spirit of resistance its position amongst Palestinians after it has been undermined by some of the forces in Palestine that were in collusion, colluding with the Zionist regime. So here, this unity shows that in spite of all of these practices and criminality levied against Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons, they still the beacon of resistance. There is more than 9,000 or 10,000 prisoners Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons, including 35 Lebanese prisoners there. This replenishment of the prisoners' movement shows that the Zionist regime hasn't been able to stop the resistance spirit and has shown that they are still able to form a front against the Zionist regime. Also, we have a message and a call for everyone who follow us. Please contact the families of prisoners, especially children. There are more than 350 children who are remanded into Israeli prisoners less than 17 years of age. These children need to be supported because they are systematically targeted through psychological and physical harm by the prison directorate in Israel and supported by the criminal mindset of Ben Gvir. So please, this is an open call for everyone to communicate with these children, also facilitate visits from the ICRC or from the lawyers to support them, also to widen the scope of people who support prisoners via different messages or correspondences to the prisoners. This will support the spirit of prisoners. I personally lived this experience. Receiving these messages, receiving these correspondences is very valuable for us. It shows that our heroism is heard and our cries did not go in vain. Therefore, such correspondences can support the will of prisoners within prisons. Until this battle is complemented and supplemented by the fight on the ground, the resistance of the Palestinian people on the ground against the Zionist forces. To continue this work to work towards brewing the streets and fields of the Arab world and Palestine towards resistance, true resistance. And this is why we need to reshape and re-establish the liberation project and the common resistance project that all the free people in the world would support, and a battle against the Zionist imperialist forces, and a battle to confront and fight against the regimes that betrayed the interest of their people and went in the lap of Epstein and the like. Thank you very much, Yana, and I would like to thank everyone. Hopefully, our support to prisoners will continue in the future. And hopefully, if there is a possibility, we can communicate with the ICRC, the International Committee for the Red Cross, to provide them with the addresses of the families of the prisoners, the contact details, and also the prisons they are remanded in order to facilitate visits to those prisons, and also a call to all the organizations to be in solidarity with the families of prisoners aside. Thank you. Thank you very much.
بكل حمولتها التاريخية تعتبر انعكاس لتاريخ الثورة. إذا اعتقل
It is
الأحكي
a
للأكثر
reflection of the
بمدن
history
فلسطين
of
وجنوب
revolution
فلسطين
since
ومحاولة لتجسيد
67
الفردي
and the
وإظهاره
experiences
كمهرب
of
للجيش
prison from an
والدفاع عن
isolated
الاختلاف
case to a
والكراهية
national case, and now
والمجادلة
all the progressist
فهذا الحدث
forces in the region they
فلسطين
should
اليوم بمثابة
provide and should
استثناء
constitute
ودفاع
should
مركزي بالداخل
a force to defend any internal collusion to preserve the national unity. And from here, the IPA, we call for the solidarity with the campaign on the right of Palestinian people for life, and to stand against the campaign for the death penalty of Palestinian prisoners. Thank Comrade Mikhail Amr, who had to leave. I would like to thank all the speakers. If you want to say a final word, please, you have the floor.
أستاذ وسام.
Comrade Wissam,
كلمة ختامية مداخلة ختامية
for the for the final remarks. For the concluding remarks, do you have any concluding remarks?
أولا بحب أكد على اللي قاله
First, I would like to
أنور.
stress what my colleague, my comrade Anwar mentioned in late 90s. I had an experience of administrative detention between 4 years to 5 years in administrative detention. Our comrades outside the detention, they organized a campaign that is very similar to the European and the international level, and it was very impactful, a very impactful solidarity campaign. It's bizarre what is happening, that people stay for 4 years and 5 years, and this was very impactful, that's why I would like to stress on the impact of the solidarity campaigns, despite the barbarian occupational Zionist regime. Many were prevented from visiting prisons. And for the Zionist regime, it is not possible. It is not possible to visit prisoners, and the exchange of prisoners have happened, and the Red Cross is blocked from entering and visiting the prisons. Probably there is an introduction to pave the way for the Red Cross to visit prisons. This has had um, uh, mitigated the severe conditions where Palestinian prisoners are living in. For example, the time for shower, the time for having the sunlight, and so on and so forth. And finally, I would like to say that in all the discussions points around Palestine, Lebanon, and Iran, there is a Zionist project to seize the Arab region, and the only solution is the resistance alternative. Second, the Palestinian project should be based on the idea that this is an existential issue and cause. And thank you, Yana, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for these final remarks. Comrade Anwar, do you want to conclude with some remarks? I would like to stress. I would like to say that that this Zionist occupational project is agonizing, and I think it seems like only a few days and a few months are left. This failure to kill the spirit of resistance in Palestine and in Lebanon and the whole region, especially this region that has become increasingly aware of the Zionist project. If the colonizer had managed to raise this consciousness, we wouldn't have seen this number of prisoners within the Israeli presence. Also, we wouldn't seen betraying regimes that are blackmailed by Epsteinophiles, and they were attempted by the colonization project. Therefore, we need to carefully read the consciousness and the will of the free nations, and we need also to look for a project that combines between liberation and unity, and the resistance culture should be a prevailing culture to stand against this system, and to have an integrated system at the national and internationalist level to stand against this regressive colonization and Zionist regime or system. Therefore, the battle is on dividing the axis and to stand against the settlement project. And we need also to diagnose the nature of this system, and to build our response and our confrontation to this system in a way that it serves the human being in this democratic transformation project. Thank you very much, Anwar. The solidarity campaign is needed by the peoples and by the IPA to mitigate the conditions of prisoners, and also to break with this injustice, and to stop this enemy that is seeking to raise our peoples, but in vain. And thank you very much. Unless if there are any other comrades wishing to speak, thank you very much for attending this webinar. Thank you very much, and thanks to all the comrades. Greetings to all of you. My heartful greetings to all of you. Thank you.
بلكي تزبط معي احدى الايام ونشوفك زي قبل كم من
I
سنه.
hope that one day I meet you soon,
سلم على
Anwar,
المرأة وعلى
like
الشاب
the
الصغير.
past, like the old days. Please say my greetings to Iman and to all the comrades. Thank you. Greetings.
No, it's good.